The winter came early that year, a brutal thing with winds sharp as broken glass and snow so heavy it choked the life from cattle where they stood. The Callahan Ranch, a sunken patch of earth cradled between two blood-red ridges, was a ghost of its former self abandoned, save for one soul. Her name was Ellie, 17, a wisp of a girl with gray eyes that held too much knowing, and hands stained with blood that no amount of scrubbing could erase. Her uncles, or maybe cousins she'd stopped caring who was who after they burned her mother's Bible and threw her into the mule barn, had tried to kill her. They'd beaten her until her ribs cracked, her teeth loosened, and her right arm hung useless, leaving her bleeding into hay soaked with animal stench. That was the third time they'd laid hands on her. But this time, they hadn't meant for her to wake up. They rode south, chasing stolen steers toward Fort Wallace, certain the blizzard would finish what their fists started. Ellie lay there, half dead, until hunger clawed louder than pain. On the second night, she dragged herself from beneath the mule's frozen corpse, her breath shallow, her lips splitting as she drank melted snow from the trough's edge. She chewed leather reins when the hunger grew too fierce, each bite a small rebellion against death. By the sixth day, she stood not tall, not strong, but alive. The cabin was a ruin, doors splintered, stove cold, the mirror shattered into jagged pieces that reflected nothing but emptiness. She made a bed in the root cellar, wrapping herself in the buffalo hide her mother had died under, its weight a tether to something she couldn't name. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. Crying stole warmth, and warmth was all she had left. The ranch was dead land, bled dry by the Callahan boys' greed. No chickens clucked, no dogs barked, only hoofprints and the faint mist of her breath in the frost remained. Still, Ellie stayed. Where else could she go? Her name, Callahan, was a curse. Spit-stained and heavy, her mother's kin were gone or too far to matter. And the law didn't care for girls like her, half-starved with broken bones and no dowry to soften their pity. Spring brought no softness. Ellie's hair grew long again, and she hacked it off with a skinning knife, the blade glinting with purpose. She taught herself to hunt rabbits, to load the rusted colt her mother had hidden in the chimney. The land didn't forgive, but it watched, and Ellie watched back, her heart a tight knot of defiance. By the time she saw the stranger ride in limping on a horse more bone than flesh, she'd already killed 3 men, one with a brick, one with the colt, and one with a shovel in a ditch. He dug himself. She didn't know their names, only that they'd come for her, and she'd ended them quietly, efficiently, her fear buried deep where it couldn't betray her. The stranger wore a threadbare blue coat, not military but old enough to carry the weight of war. His arm hung limp, his face hollow beneath a low-brimmed hat. He slumped forward, barely conscious, as his horse stopped at the gate and refused to move. Ellie waited until dark, then approached. Colt drawn, her pulse steady but her chest tight with caution. He didn't stir until she pressed the barrel to his cheek. "You here to finish me?" she asked. Her voice low, edged with suspicion. "No." "Ma'am," he rasped, his words barely audible. "Just dying. But thank you kindly for asking." She studied him, her eyes narrowing. He was young, maybe 30, maybe less if the world had been as cruel to him as it had to her. He didn't flinch when she lowered the gun, didn't move when she pulled him from the saddle and dragged him to the barn, his weight heavy against her battered frame. She fixed his shoulder with a broom handle and whiskey, her hand steady despite the scream that tore from his throat. He bit his lip bloody, and she nodded to herself. Pain kept things honest. When he woke at dawn, she was sharpening the skinning knife by the stove. The scrape of metal, a quiet rhythm. "You got a name?" he asked, his voice rough but curious. "No," she said, not looking up. He nodded, as if that made sense. "I'm Caleb." She didn't answer, but she brought him water, her movements careful, like someone testing the ground for traps. Caleb stayed, not by choice, but because infection sank its claws into him. For weeks, he burned with fever, and Ellie fed him scraps, brought snowmelt in a tin basin, and patched his coat when the seam split. She didn't smile, didn't laugh, but she didn't let him die. Her heart, though guarded, felt a flicker of something relief. Maybe that she wasn't alone in this broken place. On the 24th day, he stood, shaky but upright. "You'll need to work if you're staying," she told him, her tone flat but her eyes searching his. "I ain't staying," he said, but there was no fight in his voice. She didn't argue, just handed him the axe. They split wood until their hands bled, the silence between them thick but not unkind. Words were costly, and they'd both learned to save what little the world gave. Spring bloomed briefly, wildflowers pushing through ash and bone, a fleeting defiance of death. Coyotes returned, and so did trouble. The Callahan boys came back, drunk and mean, sniffing out their old land like dogs too stubborn to know they'd been whipped. Ellie saw their tracks first, then the fire they'd left at the tree line. A mocking dare. We know you're still breathing. Girl. She didn't run. Her fear had hardened into something colder, sharper. She loaded the Colt, her fingers steady, while Caleb sharpened the axe, his jaw tight with a quiet fury that matched her own. They came at night, 3 men, one with a scar Ellie had carved across his jaw years ago. Caleb met them at the fence, his voice low but firm. This ain't your place no more. Scar spat, his eyes glinting with malice. Ain't yours neither. Ellie stepped into view, rifle in hand, her heart pounding but her face a mask of calm. Leave, she said, the word a blade. They laughed until her first shot took one's kneecap. Caleb moved faster than she'd expected, the axe biting clean through another's collarbone. Blood soaked the grass, and Scar stood alone, staring at her, then at Caleb. You gonna let her shoot me? He asked, his voice trembling with bravado. I ain't letting her do nothing, Caleb said, stepping back. She's her own reckoning. Scar turned to run. Ellie didn't stop him, her breath steadying as the night swallowed him. Her chest ached, not with fear, but with the weight of what she'd become. By summer, they slept in the same room, but not the same bed, trust growing slow in such barren soil. Each night, Ellie watched Caleb's breath rise and fall by the stove, a quiet comfort she didn't dare name. Each morning, he rose with the sun to mend the fences, his hands calloused but gentle in their work. They never said home, but the word hung unspoken between them. The ranch earned a new name among the riders who passed through border towns. Widow's Hollow. Not Callahan Land anymore, but a place whispered about a place where a girl with ghost eyes and a man who never smiled held the ground with blood and grit. Trouble came again, as it always did. A man in a tan coat rode up, boots polished, revolvers gleaming, his voice smooth as a banker's. Paper says this land was foreclosed last year, he said, leaning on his saddle horn, sold to a firm out of Abilene. I'm here to survey and arrange your departure. Ellie's hand rested on the rifle, her stomach twisting with defiance. This land's ours, Caleb said, stepping from the cabin, his voice steady but his eyes burning. Not anymore, the man replied, his smile thin. I got documents and a badge in my coat. You'll leave, one way or another. Come back tomorrow, Ellie said, her voice flat, her heart racing with a cold resolve. The man raised a brow. Why? So I can dig the hole you'll go in if you don't, she said, not blinking. He rode away, not fast but gone. Caleb turned to her, a faint grin flickering across his face. The first she'd seen might have exaggerated about the deed. Didn't matter, she said, and it didn't. The land had chosen them, its roots tangled with their blood. In September, a letter arrived, nailed to their door in the night. You missed one. He's in Sweetwater. Still wears his daddy's ring. Ellie read it twice, her jaw tight, her heart a storm of memory and rage. Caleb watched from the fire. Friend of yours? No, she said. You know who they mean? She nodded. He didn't ask more, just saddled the horses. You don't have to come, she told him, her voice softer than she meant. He didn't answer, but he rode beside her. Sweetwater was a dust-choked mining town, 2 days southeast. They arrived at nightfall, faces wrapped in bandanas, eyes stinging with grit. Ellie watched the saloon for 3 nights, her anger simmering as she studied Amos Callahan, the man who'd left her for dead under a mule. He ran the place with a rigged poker table and a temper like wildfire, his silver ring glinting on his trigger hand. She saw the bruises on the saloon girl's throat, the fear in the stable boy's eyes, and her rage grew hotter, sharper. Caleb offered to kill him. No, she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. I don't need a killer. I need a witness. On the 4th night, she walked into the saloon alone, the Colt at her hip, her heart pounding but her steps sure. The room hushed, sensing the weight she carried. Amos didn't recognize her until she sat across from him and laid the Colt on the table. You left me under a mule, she said, her voice low, cutting. You remember. His whiskey trembled in his hand. I remember that voice, he muttered. You're dead. You should be. She shot his hand before he reached his belt, the bullet snapping bone, blood spraying the table. Men screamed. The piano stopped, but no one moved. Ellie stood, her chest tight with triumph and grief. I ain't dead, she said, then walked out, leaving him howling. Caleb met her with the horses, and they vanished into the hills, the silence between them warm, shared, like a vow. Back at the ranch, a storm waited rain like hammer blows, lightning tearing the sky. Ellie stood in the doorway, watching the horizon burn silver, her heart heavy but no longer alone. That night, she lay beside Caleb, her skin cold, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't love you," she said. The words more defense than truth. "I know," he whispered, but his arms wrapped around her. And for the first time since the barn, she slept without dreaming. When spring returned, Ellie found herself waking before dawn. The nightmares quieter but not gone. She clenched her teeth so hard they ached, but she didn't scream anymore. Caleb worked the Northfield, sinking posts for something he wouldn't name fences. Maybe, or a future she couldn't yet see. Why bother? She asked, squinting at his hammers rise and fall. Someday, we'll have more than ghosts out here, he said, his voice quiet but certain. She didn't argue, but she didn't help. Instead, she climbed the ridges with the rifle, mapping elk trails and old paths her mother had whispered of, her heart swelling with a fierce love for the land. One morning, she followed buzzards to a wrecked wagon, 2 dead mules. Blood pooling, but no body. Half a mile off, she found him. A boy, maybe 12, blonde hair sunburnt, one leg twisted, crawling through the dirt. His eyes were wide, animal wild, and he flinched when she knelt beside him. "I ain't gonna hurt you," she said, her voice soft, her chest tight with pity. He didn't speak, not even when she carried him back, his screams muffled against her coat. Caleb frowned as they approached. "You picking up strays now?" "He didn't ask for it," Ellie said, her tone sharp but her eyes pleading. "Neither did I." They set his leg, cleaned his blood. The boy, Finn, didn't talk for 3 days, didn't eat unless Ellie sat beside him. Her presence a quiet anchor. Caleb kept his distance, watching from the porch, his heart torn between caution and a growing softness he didn't want to admit. When Finn finally spoke, his voice was a whisper. "Name's Finn." "What happened?" Ellie asked, her stomach nodding. "Wagon got hit. Men in gray coats took Pa's gold tooth. Shot Ma in the throat." His eyes were solemn. "Too old for his years." "I tried to kill one. Had a knife." Caleb crouched beside him. "Careful." His voice low. "You lived. That's enough for now." Finn stayed, growing leaner, harder, but with a tenderness that hadn't burned out. He fed the lame hen, stitched up a bleeding fawn, and Ellie's heart ached with hope and fear for him. One dusk, a rider came, a woman, boots clean, eyes fearless, riding a black stallion. She didn't ask permission, just stopped at the porch. "Looking for a girl," she said. "They say she shot Amos Callahan and burned his saloon." Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "You the law?" "Worse," she said. Ellie stepped out, her heart racing but her face calm. "You found her." "The woman, Lena, studied her. Amos is dead. Shot himself with the wrong hand. Couldn't hold a bottle. Couldn't stop shaking. I didn't burn it down," Ellie said, her voice steady. "Didn't say you did," Lena replied. "There's a bounty on you now. 200, dead or alive. Texas land interests think this land's theirs by blood." Ellie's stomach twisted, but she held Lena's gaze. "What's your stake?" "I'm building something," Lena said. "Outcasts. Killers. Women with too much blood on their hands. You're one of us." Caleb stepped forward, his voice hard. "She's not going anywhere." Ellie stopped him with a glance, her heart torn. "What's your name?" "Call me Lena. Stay out here. You'll drown in men who think you owe 'em your bones. Change your mind. Head north of Elkstone. Ask for the widow's post." She rode off, leaving Ellie's heart heavy with possibility and dread. Winter came late, black and unrelenting. Finn set traps. Ellie taught him to skin pelts, and Caleb buried his last good boot when it froze through. They made it work, but shadows lingered riders on the hilltops. The glint of glass, the scrape of boots. The men hadn't forgotten her. In spring, blood soaked the snow behind the smokehouse. They found the dog, throat torn. Then Finn's tracks, racing back, his face white. "Men out there," he whispered. 4, maybe more. "Watchin'." Jude locked the door. Ellie laid the rifle on the table, her heart pounding, but her hand steady. They sat in the dark, weapons close, Finn clutching a hatchet with trembling hands. At dawn, a voice called, "Ellie Callahan, we've come to settle things." She stepped onto the porch, the air biting her skin. 5 men stood at the fence, rifles slung, gray sashes on some. The leader, clean-shaven, spoke like he owned the world. "You're living on land that ain't yours," he said. "You killed Amos, burned his holdings." Ellie's eyes burned with defiance. "I put fear in men who deserved it." He smirked. "We've got a bill, signed and sealed. This place belongs to the Torrance Trust." Caleb stepped beside her, his voice low, dangerous. "That trust ever bleed?" The man glanced at him. "Only when it needs to." They gave no deadline, but Ellie knew what was coming, her heart a storm of fear and resolve. They buried traps, glass, and tins, tripwires, stakes. Caleb lined the walls with powder and kerosene. Finn watched from the attic with a stud. His hand steadier now. Ellie cleaned the rifle, whispering to herself, "This land chose me. It'll bury them." At dawn, the shooting started. They came fast, reckless, torches in hand. Ellie's first shot dropped a rider. Caleb's punched through another's belly. Finn fired twice, hitting something. Smoke rose, and Ellie ran to starve the fire, her lungs burning. The leader's voice rang out. "You could have sold this place. Girl, you chose blood." She didn't answer, her heart a drumbeat of focus. She shot a man from behind the trough, his blood steaming on the grass. The barn caught fire, and she and Caleb beat it down. Their hands blistered, their breaths ragged. The last man came from behind, silent. Finn's rifle jammed, and Caleb turned too slow. Ellie threw the skinning knife, desperate, catching his throat. Caleb finished him with a chair leg, his face grim, his heart heavy with the boy's fear. They survived, the porch sagging, the walls shot to hell. Finn spoke first, his voice small. "I could have killed him if the rifle worked. You froze," Caleb said, not unkindly. "But you stayed," Ellie added, her voice soft, her heart swelling. "That's what counts." Later, Caleb showed Finn a cavalry pin, tarnished but proud. "Used to wear it?" he said. "You want it." Finn took it, reverent, and Ellie's heart ached with something like hope. The moon hung full, watching, and for the first time since the barn, she walked outside without a gun, her breath steady, her soul lighter. Summer baked the ground hard, buzzards circling, the creek trickling. No riders came. The silence unnatural. Caleb built from blackened barnwood a table, maybe, or a promise. Finn grew harder but kept his softness, feeding the lame hen, stitching a fawn. Ellie watched, her heart torn between pride and fear for him. One morning, riders came 3, slow, with a mule cart. Lena was among them, her gaze sharp. "We've been huntin'," she said. "Torrance's men burned 2 towns, hanged a sheriff. Your name's a warnin', but they've moved south. Why are you here?" Ellie asked, her stomach tight. "We know a place," Lena said. "Widow's Post burned. We can hold here, but we don't want to hold. We want to end it." She opened the cart. Rifles, shotguns, dynamite. Ellie's heart raced, her silence heavy. "Finn stays," she said finally. "If we ride, he stays." Lena nodded. "We'll build something new when it's done." "No," Ellie said, her voice firm, her heart set. "You build, I'm not coming back." 3 days later, Ellie, Caleb, Lena, and 2 women, Raven and Sparrow, scarred and deadly, rode to the Torrance outpost, a fortress of private guns. They walked in bold. Ellie first, her mother's shawl stitched with red thread. The first bullet wasn't theirs, but the last was. The fire burned 3 days, smoke blotting the stars. Raven took a bullet but kept walking until the station master bled out. Caleb killed 5, quiet and clean. Ellie killed the last, a man staring at a family photo. "I don't know you," he said. "You do now," she replied, her heart cold, and shot him. She walked out as the walls burned, back at the ranch. Finn ran to them, eyes wide but silent. Lena lingered. "We'll move north," she said. "Land with no lords." Ellie nodded, her heart heavy but sure. "I've buried enough. It's time something lived." Lena touched her shoulder, then rode off. Caleb stayed, and Ellie smiled just enough. Years later, they called it Quiet Hollow, a place where storms died, where a girl rose from blood to plant something that wouldn't burn. If you love this tale of grit and redemption, join us at One Kind Moment for more stories that stir the soul. Subscribe now and be part of our journey through the wild heart of the West.